Radio 4. It's 6:15. In 15 minutes' time, Richard Gordon, the doctor and the houseman, is one of the guests in Bookshelf. But now here's Colin Semper with this week's edition of Feedback.
I rise from my virtuous couch of sickness in gratitude to Susan Marling for last week's feedback and with greetings to you. And the plenitude of programmatic power is not chiefly your good selves, but wholly your good selves this week, not a BBC spokesperson in sight.
I wish to express my extreme and long irritation caused by the very frequent and quite unnecessary use of the word what.
It's Mr. Mead of Ludlow Salop who has an extreme and long irritation and who,
Although I listen and view very little,
in just 3.5 days, managed to note,
What we do is we introduce some...
What used to happen is the tusks were...
What we feel is that the whole education system...
What we shall be doing is discussing how...
What we are saying is that it has now become...
What one would be saying would be...
What I am saying is that...
What the teachers say is that...
What we're saying to them is...
What was different about it was that...
and another half-dozen sins from interviewers and interviewees alike,
how much more elegant,
suggests Mr. Reed.
would be...
We introduce some...
The tusks used to be...
We feel that the whole education system is...
We shall be discussing how to...
It has now become necessary to...
One would be saying...
I am saying that...
And so on and so on. And now Jill Brown of Caterham, Surrey.
Susan Ray, now so overexposed, drives us up the wall with her twee, overpowering, often unintelligible accent.
Poor Susan Ray. I wonder why she's singled out for criticism. Could it be that her gloriously rich accent and genuine desire to establish a rapport with her listeners have caused her to be noticed as a real person, a species hitherto uncommon in the corridors of Radio 4? I can recall hearing her for the first time, and remember thinking that at last a breath of fresh air had rushed through the fusty old beeb. As a nation, we don't all speak with the bland elocution class accent still so prevalent on the world service. Indeed, I would imagine that the majority of us speak with some sort of regional accent. We nevertheless mostly speak the Queen's English and are perfectly intelligible to our fellows. Furthermore, difficult though this may be for our World Service accent devotees to comprehend, over a third of us are above average intelligence, and some of us even have a university education behind us.
Sue Taylor of Huntington, but with a North Cheshire accent.
Will you please stop using valuable and limited airtime in quoting unkind comments on Susan Ray's accent? The 2 letters you used on your programme were unjustified and offensive. Susan Ray brings a distinctive and attractive voice to Radio 4. Let there be no more such silly criticisms. Do your correspondents not realise that each of us has an accent, not just other people?
That's Gordon Keeble of Oxford.
Could the Knock Susan Ray season be declared closed indefinitely?
I should have thought so, Christine Beasley of Watford.
She is an excellent announcer in all respects, and her distinctive voice is melodious and instantly recognisable. To those who contend that she is unintelligible, bah! What would they make of a really strong accent? I wonder if the reason that they find announcers with regional accents irritating is because they actually have to listen to them. They don't just fade into the background of oral wallpaper. But please, for the sake of all those who are on the receiving end of these unnecessary and deeply personal criticisms, drop this correspondence before their confidence and morale are sapped by it.
Let us do just that.
I write in white-hot rage.
Not at the words hammered in the anvils of announcers' continuity suites, but at...
The desecration of so much that we hold dear, that is the poets Coleridge and Wordsworth, lampooned by people not worthy to tie their shoelaces.
That biblical reference is from Mrs. Olive Maber of Southampton. She is referring to the wordsmiths at Goresmere. Mr. Pitchford of Northampton says that the programme is tantamount to blasphemy, and he's organised a wordsmithy of his own to protest to just about everyone. Now here's Christopher Matthewson of London NW2.
I am a lover of the Lake District, Grasmere, Dove Cottage, the poetry of William Wordsworth, and nature with a capital N. For that reason, I suppose I was very unlikely to derive much enjoyment from the wordsmiths at Goresmere, which attempted to satirise these objects of my affection. On the basis that it never does to be too serious about anything, and that one must keep a sense of humour, I nonetheless decided I would listen to this programme, which even the Times Review described as one of the funniest half-hours I have heard on radio for a very long time. The opening moments of the Wordsmiths, however, confirmed my deepest fears. William Wordsmith, the young English poet, spent some time in revolutionary France, we are informed. To make this point absolutely clear, a voice speaking schoolboy French then inquired,
Mademoiselle, voulez-vous coucher avec moi?
Such barbed wit set the tone of the remainder of the programme, and no doubt of the series. The truth of the matter is that whether one is a Lake District enthusiast or not, the Wordsmiths is unalloyed garbage.
The same cannot be said of Weekend on Sunday mornings on Radio 4, but according to Guy Barry of Cambridge, there appears to be confusion in the production department.
Could the Woman's Hour unit please decide what it's going to do with its Sunday morning programme? The weekends I enjoyed least of all were the ones with Jenny Mills and Helen Atkinson Wood. The old weekend Woman's Hour, consisting of extracts from the weekday programmes, wasn't such a bad idea, but I think I prefer the present programme, although I shall doubtless be swamped by the crowd who think there are too many chat shows on Radio 4.
Well, there's no swamp, only Roger Jenkins of Cambridge and Mr. Hewell of Kettering.
I would have thought the last thing Radio 4 needed was another talk show, yet this is exactly what this year Weekend has become. More, I fear, excitable Americans with something to plug, actors who can only talk about acting, and people who suffer from monomania, just like the Monday and Wednesday programmes.
I liked the repeats from Woman's Hour with the story, and I'm sure more women who are out at work and miss the afternoon programmes would be more satisfied.
So, chat show, the out-and-about version, repeats from the weekday Woman's Hour, which of you preferred to listen to on a Sunday morning? And don't forget, we've also had It's Your World, the worldwide phone-in, back on the first Sunday in April, and of course the colour supplement. Well, write and tell me what you think. I can't say that the application by the BBC for a £65 licence fee to last for 3 years has caused you to write in great numbers to me, but then perhaps you would naturally write elsewhere, since feedback is more directly about programmes and programme policy. However, we've had 50 letters or so, and the publication of the report on the BBC by Pete Marwick and Mitchell, and instigated by the government to help the Home Secretary make up his mind, provided a spur to see if anything emerges from your concerns which has not been given prominence elsewhere. Apart from advertising, sponsorship, the deletion of parts of the output, lower pay to the stars, news correspondents and executives jetting about, that sort of thing, 2 issues emerge. First, the licence fee and the elderly. Some of you would like a reduction for senior citizens, say half price, but more of you think the BBC is good value. For example, Mrs. Elsie Hall of Bradford-on-Avon, Wiltshire.
It has been suggested that all OAPs should get TV free. I do not agree with this, and we should not expect it.
Eileen Mandel of Clevedon-Avon agrees and says,
I don't know of one newspaper that has a half-price tag for pensioners, and they have to pay the full rate for the road fund licence and 1,000 other things. Why does the press feel that the BBC can give away its product?
but you are disturbed by the anomalies. Elsie Hall again.
I have OAP friends living in council accommodation with a resident warden, and they pay 10p per annum for their TV, which most of them can see in the lounge or in their private room. Other OAP friends live in blocks of council flats without a warden and without a common lounge, and they have, like us living in our own house, to pay the full licence fee. This is grossly unfair. Another anomaly is the fact that large hotels with a TV in every bedroom only pay 1 TV licence.
Mrs. Stokes from Bolton, Lancashire agrees.
Less than 5 minutes' walk from where I live is an estate of warden-controlled flats and bungalows between 90 to 100, the occupants of which pay 5 pence a year for their TV licence. This is collected by the warden. I'd like to know the reason for this anomaly.
The government is responsible for these concessionary licences, Mrs. Stokes, which benefit 500,000 pensioners living in sheltered accommodation. Actually, the scheme was extended last September to include people living in certain residential houses for the mentally and physically handicapped. The concessions add £1 to everyone else's colour fee, if you see what I mean. As for hotels, there's now a new edict from the 1st of January 1985, which orders that hotels pay 1 fee for the first 15 sets and then another fee for every additional group of 5 sets. The second concern you have is over the collection of the licence fee and the loss of income to evasion. Margaret Shaw of Enfield, Middlesex, suggests
The whole job is turned over to the Electricity Board. We could have a dated certificate, similar to car tax, which would be displayed near the electricity meter and checked by the meter reader. This would show that the household had either a TV licence, a radio-only licence, or was exempt because, for instance, the occupant was blind.
Incidentally, a number of you advocate a radio-only licence. Margaret Shilley from Brighton has another idea for fee collection.
Why not link the licence fee with the collection of rates? They're collected on a yearly or monthly basis and have systems to help OAPs, poor families and so on. Those with no television would be eager to prove they hadn't one, and so would opt out. This would surely be a cheaper way of collection, and also a way of catching those dodgers we hear so much about.
Just for interest, Jennifer Wood, who lives near Paris, explains the French system.
I'm retired and living here. Can't come back to the UK because of my numerous cats. I receive a form from the French income tax authorities certifying that my income is not enough to attract tax. I send a photocopy of this in reply to the annual demand for a TV licence, black and white or colour, and this exempts me from paying. What could be more simple? And it makes no invidious distinction between black and white and colour, which must help the TV manufacturing industry.
You will remember, I expect, that there is a little head of steam building up for Radio 4 to carry children's broadcasting, particularly storytelling.
Poor old Radio 4 is expected to carry everything. Couldn't Radios 1 and 2 be used to carry stories for children in the afternoon?
Asked Lady Catherine Farrell of Watlington, Oxfordshire. No, says Mrs. Atkinson of Bradford. The slot to use is 4:30 to 5 on Radio 4.
It's an excellent time to give up to the children. One day could be for preschool children, another for the 7 to 10-year-olds, and so on, to wean them gradually onto serious radio listening. I know it must have been said many times before, but you are ignoring your Radio 4 listeners of the future, and they won't listen unless encouraged.
Mrs. Jenkins says there's a boom in the sales of storytelling tapes for children. The implication is that radio is missing out. Caroline Stevens and her children, Abigail 7, Katie 5 and Timothy 3, offer ideas they'd like to hear.
Serialised stories, a nature programme, songs and music for children, a magazine of hobbies and interests.
Mrs. Susan Robson is really pushing.
Once again we are shown that feedback is just a puppet of the BBC to make us think we have some complaints come back. Your presenter this week said that a large percentage of the letters were to complain about the lack of children's radio. So very kindly you read us 2. End of subject. I also know that you will never get a satisfactory answer to this problem, as frankly children don't matter. But it does make me fume, and increasingly more and more parents like me.
Ah, Mrs. Robson, there are folk in BBC Radio who do think that children matter, and there are meetings about children's programmes taking place at the moment. We'll just have to wait and see.
Should you ever lack an item of sufficient levity with which to close feedback, please would you spell phonetically the name of the species of the alien on Don't Stop Now, its foundation.
So, Robert Farmer of Churchill College, Cambridge, pencil at the ready. Al the alien is a bi-cool-awade zibelong. That is, a bi-cool-a-wade zibelong. So, squiddlebob, which being interpreted means farewell.
Colin Semper. And the readers were Dilly Barlow, Ross Bartlett, Ian Strachan and Gavin Jones. The producer is Janet Thomas. The address for your letters is feedback, BBC Broadcasting House, London W1A 4WW. That's feedback, BBC Broadcasting House, London W1A 4WW.